Hello, today I want to talk about my thoughts and opinions on the Fightin 3.0 update, focusing on the balance changes that it brought to the table. I've been playing the game a lot, and I do mean a lot since 3.0 released, because I wanted to have a chance to actually get a feel for the patch and how the game works and feels now, discuss with the people on my Discord and Twitch, and I also wanted to let my emotional reaction to the changes cool down before sitting down to write and record this. And at this point, I think I'm ready to voice my current thoughts on it. I want to make it very clear that the only reason I am making this video is because I really freaking love this game and I want it to be the best game it can possibly be. And I know Main 6 is also trying their hardest to achieve that same goal, and I want them to succeed. If I didn't care about this game, this community, and the guys at Main 6, I wouldn't have spent the last 4 years of my life playing, streaming, and making content about it. And you bet your ass I wouldn't have spent the last 2 weeks playing this game more than ever before. Probably more than anyone else right now, and definitely would not have put the effort to make this video. I think the biggest and most important changes this patch brought us were a universal nerf to the defensive options and a change to meter gain, which in turn changes the overall meter economy. 3.0 made it so all characters gain less meter across the board while you're getting hit, making super meter a way more valuable resource now. As I understand it, changes to meter were made because Main 6 wanted to accommodate the big shiny flagship feature of 3.0, level 3 supers. In general, I think the changes to meter gain are good. It makes supers feel more, well, super and impactful, which in my opinion is what super moves should be, instead of seeing like 8 of them every match. I think it also very nicely addresses how powerful Fred is. Oleander now has to actually work more to earn it and cannot realistically bring him out more than once most of the time. I believe most characters now gain meter at a pretty good rate, although I do think Paprika might be gaining meter a little too fast considering how much damage she can output. Also, as Velvet, 9 out of 10 matches I win end with me never even building 2.5 bars even after not using a single cross scanner or super, which I feel might indicate the meter gain still needs to be tweaked a bit. I mean, I feel like the shiniest feature of 3.0, which was level 3s, is being completely nullified if I don't even get the possibility to use it on 90% of my games. But in general, I think the meter changes are good and healthy. The other biggest and most notable change was cross scanner. It is basically a return to neutral for the player on defense, which only costs 1/2 of their meter. Which might sound like a fair price, but with how fast you would gain meter before 3.0, it really wasn't a lot, since you would get your meter back real quick. A lot of players have argued that cross scanner is very powerful and also boring and non-interactive. Downsides to cross scanner, besides the meter cost, are that it is very minus and has almost a second of recovery on whiff. So if your opponent manages to trick you into using it at the wrong time, or you just used it carelessly, it meant you would eat a ton of damage on top of losing half of your meter. What 3.0 did to cross scanner was make it lock your meter for 10 seconds after you use it, preventing you from gaining any meter during that time, regardless of if it hit or not. In my opinion, this was probably the worst way to go about addressing cross scanner. I believe that the meter lock is completely unnecessary and not only redundant, but excessive. I understand the intention behind it, but remember how earlier I said that I thought the changes to meter gain were generally good? That is true in a vacuum. However, when we add this new way cross scanner interacts with super meters on top of that, that opinion pretty much goes out of the window. I think the overall nerf to meter gain already accomplishes what the lock is trying to do. The fact that cross scanner is a defensive tool, combined with the fact that not only are we gaining meter more slowly in general, but even more so while getting hit, means super meter is an incredibly precious resource to anyone on defense. I believe this new meter economy makes going for cross scanner more costly on its own and hence less attractive unless the player feels there's no other option. And thus, we don't need the meter lock. I have other issues with the meter lock in general. The biggest one is that 10 seconds is an absolute eternity in a game like this, which makes it feel like you're being straight up punished for using one of your options, since there is already a cost involved with it, which again, 3.0 made even greater and more impactful. I don't think making your players feel like they're being punished for successfully using an option when they need it is good game design. My other major issue with it is the visual implementation. When your meter gets locked out, it turns into a solid shade of gray, which is problematic because it means that you cannot tell how much meter the player who used cross scanner really has during the lockout period. This information is kind of important, For example, if a player uses cross scanner and then you look at the meter and it says 2, they might be willing to use another cross scanner if they had a full 3 bars beforehand, since they would still keep 2 more bars, but you can't tell by looking at the UI since it just says 2 and it's all one single solid shade of gray. If a player uses cross scanner at 3 bars, it will look the same as a player who used cross scanner at 2.5 or 2 2/3. Fighting game UIs are meant to give you all the information you need at a glance, so this, in my opinion, goes against what good UI design is supposed to accomplish. A solution to that would be to make the meter have 2 different shades of gray when locked out, although, as I already mentioned, I think the whole idea of locking the meter is fundamentally wrong. I've seen people argue that this change makes cross scanner more similar to burst, but I don't think they are really equivalent at all, neither in terms of mechanics nor game feel. Because burst has its own meter instead of using your super meter, which means you don't feel punished for successfully using the mechanic. If we are going to argue about making cross scanner more like burst, then maybe it should have its own meter instead. Although, I personally do like the implications of cross scanner being tied up to the super meter when it comes to the meter economy in this particular game. I think it makes it a more interesting mechanic, so again, I'm not a big fan of that solution. Tying cross scanner to its own meter would maybe bring them's fighting hertz more in line with what's more traditional in other fighting games, which I've seen other people argue for in general. However, I really don't like any arguments that try to push them's fighting hertz to be more quote-unquote traditional. Because when you're a smaller dev team and your game is so niche and it isn't an already established IP, you want your game to differentiate itself from the rest. Otherwise, why would anyone give it a chance over something with a more established legacy? I know I personally stuck to them's fighting hertz over pretty much any other fighting game I've ever played because it felt different and had something that no other fighting game gave me. And I know that is also the case for many other fans of this game. I do understand this is 100% preference and subjective, and other people enjoy the more traditional things. However, I really don't think it is the right direction for a game like TFH to take. I do believe it would be for the best to get rid of the lockout mechanic in its entirety. However, I also had someone suggest that maybe cross scanner should cut your meter gain in half for a certain amount of time instead of straight up locking it. And I do think that solution is a little more palatable. One of the things I personally have always disliked about cross scanner is that it feels very inconsistent to block, and hence trying to bait or punish it can be inconsistent at best and a waste of time at worst, which in turn make it feel boring and less interactive. I always thought making it so cross scanner is always blockable if triggered by 5A or 2A would be a way better solution, and would make the mechanic more engaging and interesting to play around. Although I don't know how feasible it would be to accomplish that. The other big change to defense is that now you cannot input anything after performing a directional tech roll. You can only block, and you're also now vulnerable to strikes near the end of your roll. This means that you now don't have the option to tech roll into reversal, which I'm honestly baffled by, as I don't understand why this change was needed.
Oh, I thought they were gonna wake up super there. That's why I didn't like grab them straight out of the tech.
Oh wait! If they roll forward, they cannot wake up super anymore! I don't even have to worry about that shit! Oh, that sucks! I can just fucking run and grab even if they have meter! Who the fuck cares? I don't even have to think! That's so stupid! In my opinion, directional tech rolls were already more than risky enough to offset the rewards you could get from them. Before, you could tech roll into a reversal option, which meant that if your opponent was being mindlessly aggressive or just not paying attention, they would get hit and you would turn the tables around and put them on defense. However, rolling was very risky because you could get grabbed before you could even try to input your reversal. It's also the fact that if your opponent was paying attention, they could also make an educated guess that you're trying to tech roll into a reversal, and instead they could just block your move and make you with a counter hit combo that takes away half of your health bar, and you're back on defense but in an even worse state than before. So indeed, I would argue that all of that made directional tech rolling have enough inherent risk to offset the reward. On top of that, 3.0 also increased the active frames for grab, which indirectly also nerfs directional tech rolling, as it theoretically makes tech chasing easier. I would argue that having the option to reversal from directional tech roll made the game more interesting and engaging in general, for players both on defense and offense, and for spectators. The game being engaging to spectators is very important to me as a streamer, and I'm also sure that Main 6 cares about that a lot, especially now that in-person events are a thing again. In its current state, I feel like directional tech rolling on the ground is pretty much a pointless mechanic that might as well be removed, since pretty much most of the time there is no real incentive to use it. It went from being a risk-reward mechanic to being a lose-lose mechanic, since now if you tech roll, at worst you get grabbed or hit and back to the corner in an even worse state than before, and at best you're out of the corner but still blocking and still at the same disadvantage or even worse against cross-up heavy characters. These changes also mean that the game is now more prone to snowball situations, which is something that really bothers me because I believe that some of the changes up until 2.0 were made specifically to make the game less prone to snowball situations, which are, again, more boring. Like I said, this just makes the game more, dumbed down. It literally just dumbs down the game. That's all it does. If you're already winning, you don't have to think as much. You don't have to worry about your opponent having some sort of reversing it of it. The problem is they made it completely pointless to roll now, but there's literally no reason to tech roll ever. After spending the last 2 weeks playing 3.0, all of this, in my opinion, basically makes the entire Them's Fightin Hertz experience more boring and less interactive in general, instead of that only being the case during certain specific situations. Being on offense is just more boring and less engaging because I don't have to consider my opponents having those options anymore, so it just becomes a dumbed down version of what it used to be. Or as I've been saying, less thinky, more mashy. And defense just becomes less engaging and more annoying / frustrating because you're just kind of stuck in there. And in the worst case scenarios, you're basically just holding it and praying you can get enough meter for a cross scanner from blocking before you guess wrong. I understand that being on defense is supposed to mean you're at a disadvantage, and I understand that defense was too strong before, I really do, but I would argue that these changes tipped the scales too much towards the other side, indirectly buffing characters with more aggressive or reset heavy playstyles to a degree that I don't think was intended, without giving other characters that might have relied on the defense more anything to compensate for it. Most notably Velvet, who in my opinion has been the most neglected character for most of the game's life. I know a lot of Velvet players are pretty upset. I know some who decided to stop playing the character, and I know at least one who straight up decided to quit the game entirely because of how bad 3.0 felt to them. And I can't blame them. I certainly agree with their sentiment, and this time around I even hear people who don't play Velvet say she got hit the worst and too harshly on this update. For the record, I know some people hearing this right now will probably say or think I'm only saying this because I'm a salty Velvet main scrub and 3.0 took away my crutches, making me lose even more games now, but anyone who knows me and watches me play on stream knows that that couldn't be farther from the truth, as my win rate remains the same. These opinions have nothing to do with me losing games, they are based solely on what the game feels like to play now, even when I'm winning. And I know there are many other players of varying skill levels who feel the same way. I have a feeling that most of the people who feel positively about the update right now are only riding the high of being able to be aggressive without having to think about it as much, but will turn around once they get put in a situation where they have to be on defense, or once the high wears off. And others are just blinded by the shiny new level 3 supers, but the novelty of that will wear off soon enough as well. I obviously don't believe this is the case for everyone who likes the update, but I have a feeling it is the case for many. I feel the general intention behind this update and the changes it brought are good, but I feel like the execution just pushes the game too hard towards the opposite side of offense versus defense, making offense way too strong now instead of bringing it to a good stable middle ground. I want to believe Main 6 will listen to this feedback and the feedback provided by everyone else during the last 2 weeks and make the right decisions and changes to make the game as good as it can be. I know that's what they are always striving to accomplish, and I hope that they can do it in a way that lets the majority enjoy the game. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this video, at least for now. I know this video is not as funny and probably not as entertaining as my usual content, but I think this is an important discussion. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing me ramble about this stuff, and if you're someone from Main 6, I hope my thoughts are at least a little bit useful to you guys. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, consider giving it a like and maybe subscribe. If you want to hang out with me and my friends while we play Them's Fightin Hertz and other games, you can come watch us live on my Twitch channel. I stream Them's Fightin Hertz every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and other games Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. If you'd like to support my content, you can check out my Patreon. Link will be in the description below. Shout out to my current patrons here on screen. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.